Democrats are fighting back. Wait, that can't be right. Is that right? That's actually what is. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Apparently they are. Democrats are mad as heck, and they're not going to take it anymore. Over what, you ask? Oh, it's gerrymandering, that sexy topic that nobody can get enough of. But it is actually incredibly important. And if you're not familiar with what gerrymandering is, it's a term that comes from a guy named Jerry and the word salamander. And that is not a joke at all. Back in the year 1812, the governor of Massachusetts approved a new map that favored his own political party, and his name was Jerry. And when people looked at that map, they were like, hey, that kind of looks like a salamander, and thus gerrymandering was born. It's essentially when you redraw maps to favor one particular political party, and ironically, it is bipartisan. Republicans love gerrymandering. Democrats have been known to gerrymander a time or two. However, the big difference is that Republicans will typically leave gerrymandering or redistricting up to the legislature, whereas Democrats will oftentimes bring in independent or bipartisan commissions to ensure that the process is that new four-letter F word, fair. But not anymore. Perhaps, maybe, hopefully not. Here is Democratic Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul.
Do you think, given this situation where we've had these court battles, everything, that in this 2027 amendment that you may put forward, that the Independent Redistricting Commission should be disbanded or changed in some way so that you don't have to go through that again in 32?
Yes. I'm tired of fighting this fight with my hand tied behind my back. Republicans take over the legislature, they can have at it. But until then, we're in charge, and we're sick and tired of being pushed around when other states don't have the same aspirations that we always have had. And I hold those dear. But I cannot ignore that the playing field has changed dramatically. And shame on us if we ignore that fact and cling tight to the vestiges of the past. That era is over. Donald Trump eliminated that forever.
Yeah, isn't it Republicans who are supposed to, cling to vestiges of the past? Speaking of Republicans, they currently have a very slim majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, and that makes it incredibly difficult for them to pass things like the Big Beautiful Bill, otherwise known as the largest wealth transfer to the 1% in American history. So what do? They do what Trump always does, which he calls people and basically says, hey, do me a little bit of a favor. Kind of like how he did in Georgia when he needed just a few more votes, except Georgia said, hey, get out of here, Trump. And now with Texas, Abbott is basically saying, yes, sir, whatever you need. So the goal is for them to redraw the map and eventually give themselves 5 new Republican lawmakers and thus increase their majority and make it easier for them to pass whatever they want to pass. Brilliant idea. There's just one problem. In Texas, 2/3 of those lawmakers have to actually be present for that vote to take place. And as of this recording, over 50 Democratic lawmakers have just kind of left. And I think that's very funny because it is infuriating the Republicans to the point that now Abbott is calling for them to be arrested. What a bunch of soy boys. Here is Ken Martin.
Donald Trump, Greg Abbott, Ken Paxton, they said they wanted a showdown. And guess what? That's exactly what they're getting, a showdown. This is not the Democratic Party of your grandfather, right? Which would bring a pencil to a knife fight. We're bringing a knife to a knife fight. We're going to fight fire with fire. And we're going to do everything we can right now to stand up against this unconstitutional power grab by the Republicans. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, bringing a knife to a knife fight does sound like a solid strategy. I will say that. Though this is the Democratic Party, so I do worry that it'll be a butter knife. But be that as it may, I should mention that redistricting typically happens every 10 years after the census, and it is done to better accurately reflect the changing population. So essentially, redistricting should work in a way that bolsters democracy, but gerrymandering undermines it, as State Representative Ann Johnson explains here.
I don't know a single voter that wants to go to the polls and know that a politician has already determined who's going to win the race. Nobody likes gerrymandering. Nobody wants this extremism. And it is why, for Sessions, I have offered an independent commission to redraw lines. We are not afraid of voters drawing our lines and letting us compete fairly. But that's not even what they want to do. They are purposely saying that they're going to redraw right now, mid-decade, even though this is not constitutional and not normal. And they admitted they're going to do it on purely political partisan basis to ensure that they can steal 5 Republican seats for Trump at a time where his big, ugly bill passed by one vote, and they want 5 before voters in this country can turn up next election and say no. We are done with what you're doing. We are done with the way that you're dismantling our economic system. the faith that we have in the institutions and standing up. And as said yesterday, courage is contagious. And so it is time to pass it on.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. One thing I've gleaned in my 22 years of life on this planet is that Republicans aren't like huge fans of a lot of people voting. It's way easier to go, hey, a bunch of people who agree with us live in this area right here. Let's just draw a little line around it and then we won't have to worry about anything. The problem is that if you're a Democrat in that area, you might not even show up to the polls at all because your politicians have already decided that your vote essentially doesn't matter. And the same is true if it's a Democrat area and you're a Republican. It's generally not good to draw maps in favor of any particular political party because it undermines democracy. Anyway, here's James Tallarico explaining this most recent power grab by the Trump administration, as well as what these Democratic lawmakers are doing about it.
This is State Representative James Tallarico from Texas. If you're seeing this video, my Democratic colleagues and I have just left our beloved state to break quorum and stop Trump's redistricting power grab. Trump told our Republican colleagues to redraw the political maps here in Texas in the middle of the decade to get him 5 more seats and protect his majority in Congress. They're turning our districts into crazy shapes to guarantee the outcome they want in the 2026 elections. If this power grab succeeds, they will hang on to power without any accountability from the voters. But Texas Democrats are fighting back. We're leaving the state, breaking quorum, and preventing Republicans from silencing our voices and rigging the next election. We are not fighting for the Democratic Party. We are fighting for the democratic process, and the stakes could not be higher. We have to take a stand.
Way to go, Tallarico. Now, listen, if Republicans are going to just redraw the map into crazy shapes, I actually have some suggestions that I come up with, and they can, feel free to use these or not. One, I thought the shape of a salamander, just like for nostalgic purposes. They love nostalgia. I thought it would be cute. Another one could just be in the shape of a boot, huh? Maybe another one with like a tongue coming out of it, like a boot, like they look and then one could just be a cross, but one that looks like it's on fire. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. We like to have fun. Anyway, speaking of fun, here's Governor Greg Abbott trying real hard to sound real tough.
What is the felony? What are the penalties for this?
So very simply, it would be bribery if any lawmaker took money to perform or to refuse to perform an act in the legislature. And the reports are these legislators have been both, they sought money and they offered money to skip the vote, to leave the legislature, to take a legislative act. That would be bribery. And so the facts will have to come out. But I think based upon comments made by legislators themselves, they face a possibility of facing bribery charges, which is a second-degree felony in the state of Texas. There's one way to cure that, and that is if they get back to the state of Texas and make quorum today at a hearing that we have at 3 o'clock, they can cure themselves of any quid pro quo that would subject them to potential bribery charges.
So you want to know why they're trying this whole bribery angle? It's because many Texas lawmakers literally can't afford to just up and leave the state. They have like separate full-time jobs, separate responsibilities, because Texas doesn't pay them very well. It's almost like Texas tries to deter people from pursuing a career in civil service, but that would almost be like trying to deter people from vote. Oh, wait. Anyway, here is one particular Texas voter actually laying down the law, and I gotta say, it's just a joy to listen to. So please enjoy, and maybe Democrats should take notes all over the country.
He was caught cheating on video on the golf course. He cheated on his taxes. He cheated on his business loans. He cheated on his wives. He cheated on the business contractors that he stiffed through 40 years of business. And he tried to cheat in the 2020 election. Now he's trying to cheat and win this 2026 midterm election because he knows he can't win. They are telling you that your integrity, your honor, and your duty is for sale. And he is the buyer. And if you obey, you will be rewarded by not being primaried. And if you stand up to him and say no, you will be punished and primaried. And it's that diabolical, it's that simple. In other words, and I don't say this lightly, In other words, he's asking each of you to be one, pardon this word, I mean it in a philosophical way, not a sexual way, but he's asking every one of the Republican representatives in this room to be one of his prostitutes.
Well said. And, you know, I don't know what's going to change in the time between recording this video and it going live, but I think now is a really good time to remember that there are different ways to do politics than just this kind of oppositional back and forth, tit for tat kind of shtick that we're so used to. Because really, what these Democratic lawmakers are doing is actually just taking part in a favorite American pastime. They've just gone fishing. They're out. They're not taking part in the sham. They're not showing up. They're saying if you're going to use this system purely for your own political gain, then we're just going to be over here for a little while. And the entertaining part is that it's absolutely infuriating the Republicans, who are like the bullies waiting outside a school to beat you up, not realizing that you've been at home for an hour already playing Zelda, Ocarina of Time, or Ocarina. I don't know which it is. And at this point, I'm too afraid to ask. So kudos to these Democratic lawmakers, and kudos to these Democratic voters for making their voice heard. And hopefully other Democrats around the nation can take a cue from what they're doing. I don't know. And honestly, I say gerrymander everyone. Let's become the most gerrymanderingest political party in American history. Because at this point, who cares? What else are we going to do? Play by the rules? That sounds suspiciously like clinging to a vestige of the past. But don't listen to me. That's just more of a global note. So anyway, bye everybody.